Newt, Newt. Hello, welcome to the Yarn and Yarns YouTube channel. My name is Angela and all of the places you can find me should be linked in the description box just below this video. Here on the channel you'll find me chatting about my adventures in knitting and spinning and weaving and crochet. Welcome. If you are new or returning, you are most welcome here. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy lives to listen to me waffle on about the things that I have been making. I have got a packed episode for you today. It's been 2 weeks since I sat and chatted to you, and I've got tons to show you, and in fact I've relegated some of it to next week because I want to try and, as usual, keep my video to between 30 and 40 minutes long, and I can waffle enough around a couple of projects, let alone everything that I've been working on since I last saw you. Thank you so much to everyone who left kind comments on the last Yarn and Yarns extra that I popped up last week. So it hasn't been an entire 2 weeks since you last saw this face. I popped up a video chatting about the end of my combo spin and also how I spin on my wheel, which a lot of you seem to really enjoy, so I appreciate that. I enjoy putting those videos together for you. So yeah, if you are new to the channel, you may hear my noisy cat in the background. That often happens, but as well as the weekly chats, I have started to try and put up little videos about particular topics, which I call Yarn and Yarns extras. Anyway, I'm waffling. This video is never going to be 30 minutes if I don't stick to my agenda and start chatting to you. So grab a drink. I have some tea in my proud to be a knitter mug today. And settle in, and as always below, let me know what you're working on while you're watching. I love to hear about that stuff. I have all of the segments for you today, as well as a sneaky, probably one-off or segment about dyeing yarn at the end of the video, which will tie into the lovely weekend away that I had with some friends, and also some chatter about how you can potentially get involved in the next window display that I have at my yarn shop. I'm going to start with weaving this week because it's going to definitely be the shortest segment. If you watched the last episode, you will know that I warped up my loom, which is a shacked rigid heddle 10-inch loom that I came by second hand. I warped it up as an experiment with a new reed that I had, which allows me to work with finer weight yarns. So I've got some fingering weight or 4-ply yarn on my warp, and I made a little rainbow warp. And I started to experiment with that warp, and I wasn't quite getting the results that I expected. But thanks to a lovely comment from Ellie, hi Ellie, who often leaves brilliant, really useful comments for me about my weaving. She suggested that in order to achieve the effect I wanted, I just needed to not beat down so hard. Had a little experiment with that, and of course she was totally right, but literally this is all I've done. It's a few square inches, so I'll hold it up to the camera so you can see. So this piece here is what I showed you last time. So I'd sort of pushed down on my weft threads really hard, so I was kind of completely hiding that rainbow warp, whereas up here I have tried to do that a little more lightly, and I think you can see the rainbow warp is definitely showing up much more behind these weft segments here. So where the red touches the red, the orange touches the orange, yellow to yellow, green to green, blue to blue, there is a much more sort of like dense shot of that colour, as opposed to the other sections where you can start to see that rainbow warp coming through a bit. So that's much more kind of what I was expecting. But I've got tons and tons of warp left to work through on this loom. As I say, I've barely touched it. This was maybe 20 minutes work one evening this week. So yeah, I've got plenty more experimenting on this warp to do. I'm going to try and experiment with just some one colour squares, so maybe all red or all green. I'll see what yarn I've got left. I'm using up scraps, so some of these I won't have enough. My idea is to try and make a few coasters just to rest some mugs and cups on. I also had, I think Fiona commented to say she'd love to see what this looked like with just some white or some natural coloured yarn over the top. So I think I shall do that as well, maybe some black, just as a complete experiment. This warp was always going to be a bit of a playful one for me for figuring out what I like with this reed, and also how to play with these finer weight yarns. So I'm very much enjoying that so far. The yarns I'm using in that are just scrap sock yarns left over from previous projects. Yeah, weaving is definitely my playtime at the moment, so I am definitely planning on squeezing some more of that in this week. On to spinning next, I think. If you did watch that Yarn and Yarns extra video last week, you will know that I have finally finished my combo spin. So I have been working on spinning for a sweater. This is the first time I've attempted to do so since November. Basically, I grabbed a whole ton of different fibres from my fibre stash, and they all had some sort of colour theme. So my favourite colour is orange, and so I picked oranges, yellows, those sort of sunsetty colours to try and spin for a sweater. So yes, I spun the final skein, which, as I'm looking, I've piled all these up together and I now have no idea which one was the final skein. So let's just say it was this one. So this one represents the final skein in my combo spin. So yeah, I have all this yarn finished and ready for a sweater, hopefully, fingers crossed. And I shall segue into knitting next, because I have actually knit up a tiny little swatch with this yarn to try and start figuring out what I want to do with it. So I'll chat about that in a little while. As well as that combo spin, I have started a new drop spinning project and also a new project on my wheel. But again, because I have so much to try and get through today, I will chat about those next week. I did manage to finish 2 other small spins, one of which is completely AWOL. I have no idea where it's gone. It's possibly buried in my little bucket of hand spun. Actually, is a tiny little sample of merino fibre. But I spun up on my drop spindle last weekend. A couple of the ladies that I went away with said they would be interested in a quick drop spindling lesson. So I took a bunch of fibre and a bunch of my spindles, and we had a little play, and the little pink merino sample was what came out of my sort of trying to show them, probably ineptly, sorry Charlie and Ruth, how to spin on a drop spindle. I also managed to finish another little drop spindle project that has been hanging around for ages. So many months ago, my lovely friend Caroline, who I chat about fairly often on these videos, she is the owner and dyer of Colourful Creativity, and you'll find her at colourfulcreativity.nl, and you'll find her as Coraline everywhere online. She sent me a little package, and in that package was some orange fibre, and she'd started spinning it but wasn't really enjoying it. So she passed it along to me, and I also started spinning it, and then had, I think, probably the same problems as she was having. It wasn't drafting very evenly, and the fibre's not the softest, but that doesn't really bother me. It was more the sort of difficulty I was having drafting it, and I was also using my spindle, which I forgot to bring over. It's a gorgeous spindle. Shall I go grab it? Yes, I'll go and grab it. Bear with me. So this is the spindle I was using, and it's probably the one spindle that I own that I find the most aesthetically pleasing, because orange, but it's also the most flighty of my spindles, and it doesn't always want to I don't want to say spin nicely, because that's not true. When I flick and get the sort of spindle going, it doesn't always, the energy in the spindle doesn't always last that long. So she can be a little bit temperamental. She starts wobbling quite quickly. So yes, I used her to spin this, so I think the combination of the fibre and the spindle just kind of put me off of it for a little wee while, but it's now done, and I really love this little sample of fibre. The colour is gorgeous, the yarn is really nice and woolly. Does that even make sense? You know what I mean. There's a nice texture to it. I was thinking about putting this straight into a knitted project, but there wasn't quite enough for what I wanted to do, so this will ruminate in my little handspun stash for a while, and I'm sure it will get used for something in the not too distant future. When I went to get the spindle, I also went to grab that pink merino, so yeah, that's literally it. So yeah, I got those two little samples done on my drop spindle, as well as finishing off that combo spin. And I've started 2 new spins. It's been quite a productive time on the wheel and the spindles, which is brilliant. So I think with that we shall segue into knitting, because I have knit up a little swatch from one of the skeins of my handspun. So I may put up a extra video chatting through the process of deciding what patterns to look at, and basically working with the handspun and maybe casting on that sweater project, just to chat a little bit more about my thoughts around that. So if that's something you'll be interested in, then please let me know. Obviously it takes time to make these videos and edit them and pop them up, so I want to try as much as possible obviously to put up content that you're interested in watching. So let me know if you want a more detailed chat about into deciding what I'm going to make with the handspun. But anyway, I think I have decided, so I have, for the most part, my yarn is a DK to worsted. It's probably heavy fingering in places, but that's just the nature of my handspun. Also the fact that I've used different fibres, and it was quite tricky to spin all of those fibres consistently. Bearing in mind that I've got a sort of DK worsted for the most part yarn, and I ended up with about 1400 meters. I had a look through Ravelry, and I think I've settled on the Weekender pattern by Andrea Mowry, so I thought I'd do a little swatch for that pattern. So I picked out a skein of yarn and wound it up, and then I also sort of picked from that skein a little sample. So these colours I was not massively enamoured with. They actually look really nice knit up, but I also wanted to choose a bit of the yarn which had the Southdown fibre in, because the Southdown was the most different and the most inconsistent in my spin. It was a very spongy fibre, so it's probably the most thick and thin. So let me just show you a section of the yarn if I can. So there's quite a sort of big slubby bit there, and then it sort of graduates through to some more sort of like finely spun parts. So I figured if I swatched with that, because it's the most unruly, then that would give me hopefully a good idea of the sort of fabric that I'm going to come up with. And I really like how the swatch turned out. I'm hoping I might be able to keep this for posterity, so I'm just leaving it on this needle at the moment. I'm not going to cast it off, just in case I need every last scrap. So yeah, that's kind of my plan at the moment, the Weekender. I'm itching to cast it on, but I am being a little bit devious with myself because I already have, I think, about 6 sweater projects on the go. So I am going to try and avoid casting this on until I've finished at least one of those sweaters. And one of the ways I am doing that is by not purchasing the pattern. So I don't have the Weekender in my Ravelry library, which is helping me resist casting this on. So yeah, but this will go onto the needles very, very soon. I have a finished object to show you, and a work in progress for knitting too. So actually I've got 2 finished objects, but one of them I don't have with me. As part of our weekend away, we decided to do a little sock swap. So we have been knitting away in secretly for the last few weeks, few months, to make a sock for another person that came along on our weekend away. So I made a pair of blueberry waffle socks, and I'll pop a picture in here. and I made them from a skein of Yarny Love in the peacock colourway, and I really enjoyed making them. I haven't made blueberry waffles for ages. It's a free pattern over on Ravelry, really simple, and the yarn was lovely to work with, and thankfully they fit the recipient. It's always a bit nerve-wracking, isn't it, when you're making socks for someone that you haven't made for before. I mean, I've made dozens upon dozens of pairs of socks, but usually for me or a few of my family members, and I kind of have the sock recipes for each of those people down in my head, and I don't need to think about it. So it's, yeah, always a bit of a nerve-wracking time when you're making someone socks for the first time, but luckily they fit the recipient, and always good. My second finished object was living in this gorgeous bag by Emma of Eldenwood Craft for my Christmas Eve cast on. So it is my Patons Croy socks, or Patons Croy socks, in the blue stripe rag colourway. These were one of the projects that I took away with me last weekend, because in theory, knitting on socks, just plain vanilla socks, round and round, should be quite simple when you're chatting with friends and in company, shouldn't it? So here are my socks. And for the most part, they were pretty simple. I think I'd already finished the first sock, and I'd cast on, I think, hadn't I, for the cuff of the second sock. So basically I knit the rest of this second sock over the weekend. However, oh my goodness, you just would not fathom how difficult knitting a simple heel into a sock and a toe, both of them went wrong, is while knitting in the company of amazing people. We were just having so much fun, and we laughed so much over that weekend. I just couldn't concentrate on doing my toe and my heel. Look, I'll show you. Look, there's something weird going on here on the toe. There's some weird pick-up stuff going on here around the heel. I think particularly in the evenings when we were sat around knitting, we were just having so many laughs, I just couldn't concentrate. There was one point where we were having a chat about my shop, and the girls were deciding whether they could come up with a window display idea, because obviously that's something I've been chatting about in the videos. They were trying to come up with a theme for the window display, so they were looking through various patterns on Ravelry, checking out some of the hot right now stuff. I'm not going to say exactly what theme they've come up with, because maybe they'll actually follow through and we'll do this. Seems very unlikely, but yeah, there was loads of excitement about what idea they could come up with, and you know how I like to have things like hanging in the window and stuff. There was tons of ideas about what could go into this display, and we were just laughing and chatting so much that a simple heel and toe became really difficult. But I don't mind. These socks are for me, and they're a lovely memory of my wonderful friend Erin, who sent me the yarn, and the few design features in the toe and the heel will be a forever reminder of that fun weekend. Thanks for the memories, girls. The other project that came away with me at the weekend was my Radiate sweater, which is a pattern by Johi Locatelli from Interpretations Volume 4. I'll show you a picture of Johi's version of the sweater. I am knitting mine from a lovely skein of Owl About yarn. That was the Retreat colourway from the first Knit Tea Retreat. And I am pairing that, so it's this lovely variegated purple, with some Debbie Bliss Rialto DK that I had in my stash in this gorgeous green colourway. So as you can see, I have put a good dent in this project now. If I flip it round, this lovely snowman marker, which was a gift from Caroline, is marking where this was when I showed you last time. So I have knit down the yoke, and I've got a good way down the body, and I've also started on both of the sleeves, and I'm really pleased with this. I've got it all on cables and yarn and stuff, because I wanted to make sure that it was all fitting okay. Now I've started the sleeves, so if I get time before I head out today, I'll just pop this on. I won't do it now because I'm sitting down and pushed into the corner against the wall. I'll try this on so you can see how it's looking, but I'm really pleased with how it is turning out. I have affectionately named this my She-Hulk sweater. This purple and green remind me of the Incredible Hulk. I love how that yoke is looking in Jenny's gorgeous yarn, and thanks to a few people who also attended the first Cardiff Knit Tea retreat, I was able to nab a couple of extra bits of leftovers, so I had enough to finish my yoke. I've still got some yarn left over as well, so I'm contemplating maybe putting in a little bit of the purple around the rib bands, but on the sleeves and the body, but we'll see. This sort of pattern up here is created with slip stitches, and the tension's slightly different to the body, but actually when I've got this on and it's kind of stretched out, it doesn't really notice in the front. It does notice in the back a little bit. I think I need to try and do that trick. Obviously I need a little bit more room at the front than the back, as most women do. So I think I need to come up with some measurements for myself so that I can knit the right chest circumference, but then maybe have less stitches on the back, because a lot of patterns just divide half and half, don't they? So I think I need to try and figure out a measurement for across my back so that I can move the armholes round slightly so I get a little bit more fabric at the front. Or we shall see on that one. That's an idea for me to experiment with in the future. I'm hoping to have this done in the not too distant future. It's all DK weight yarn, so it knits up fairly quickly, and it's just mindless round and round now, apart from the decreases that I need to do on the arms. Extra motivation of, if I finish one of these sweaters that I'm working on, I can cast on my weekender in my handspun, which I'm desperate to do. That project is living in my orange cat's bag, which I made myself. Onto crochet. I have got an almost finished object and a new work in progress to show you for crochet this week. So my almost finished object is the cushion cowl, which I have been working on. You may be aware if you've watched before, I started this before Christmas, maybe November time. The designer, Anna Nikki Pirowitz, brought this cushion pattern out as a crochet along, and I started it in the time frame of the crochet along, and then things just got busy at the end of the year and I didn't quite get around to finishing it. So last week I think I mentioned that I'd finished all the squares. This week I have joined them all together. So here they are. So I now just need to find a backing for this. So in the pattern, Anna makes a cushion cover. She doesn't crochet the back. She sews up a cushion cover and then sews the crochet onto that. So I am going to keep a lookout to see if I can find some fabric that might match my colours, or even a ready-made cushion. Yeah, I used Roman felted tweed in the avocado is the green, tawny is the purple, teal, can't remember the name of the blue colour, but there is a list of the yarns used on my project page, which will be linked down below. So yeah, I just blocked these out and I have crocheted them together. In the end, I was hoping to use one ball each of the Rowan felted tweed. In the end, I had enough of the blue, not quite enough of the purple and the green, which was quite fun. I think probably either, you know, if you leave a slightly longer end on one of the colours, because the blue was down to the last few meters, or maybe I crocheted a few stitches looser than I did in the blue, or maybe there was just a little bit extra on the blue ball. Maybe the manufacturers wound 52 grams instead of 50 grams, who knows. But luckily I had some tawny and some avocado left over from the Canady shawl that I made a little while ago, so I was able to raid my scrap basket of felted tweed and not have to break into new balls for that. Otherwise that probably would have been really annoying. So let me hold that back again so you can kind of see the whole cushion front. I'm not going to call that a finished project until it's actually made up into a cushion, otherwise it will just languish. So I'm going to leave that open on my Ravelry project page to remind me that it actually needs to get finished. So final project of the day is a new one. So we have a crochet group that meets in the shop on a Wednesday. I've chatted about them many times before, but they're all dedicated die-hard crocheters, and a few of them are subscribers to various crochet magazines here in the UK, and if a new issue comes out they bring it along to the group and we all have a look through. And in the latest issue of Inside Crochet magazine, I fell in love with the cover project, but no one else in the group liked it. Some of them actively disliked it, in fact. But when I said I loved it, the lady whose magazine it was very generously just ripped the project out of the magazine and gave it to me. So I am working away on this pattern, which if you follow Eden Cottage Yarns, you might have seen a picture of this pattern on their feed recently, because the yarn used in this sample is theirs. It's called the Open Grid Sweater. It's a pattern by Claire Montgomery, and as I say, it's in the current, I still think it's current issue of Inside Crochet magazine. And there was just something about it, I just really loved it. So I started it. I'm almost at a bit of a standstill with this project because I'm waiting for a yarn order to come in. I've got a bit of yarn to work through, but then I need to wait. So hopefully that order will arrive this week, because this is a great project for me to work on in the shop. It's yarns that I sell in the shop, and it's a fairly simple pattern so far. So I have chosen to work with Rowan Valley Tweed, and I've worked with this yarn before. In fact, you might recognise this colour as well, because I have a really simple v-neck sweater that I wear all the time from this yarn. So I picked a bunch of Valley Tweed colours and have got started. I haven't had the best of luck with crochet sweaters. If you've been following me for a while, the other sweater that I tried in the life of this podcast, the sizing was completely ridiculous and I ended up ripping it out. So I'm giving it another go. Worst case scenario, this will come back out and I'll use it for something else. But this is my progress so far. So I have used 3 colours so far. So the charcoal grey, this kind of browny grey, and then I'm onto the orange. And basically I'm fading these colours up through the sweater, which is something they employ in the original design. However, they mix the colours in random orders in the design. It doesn't really show because they keep this mustardy yellow to the bottom, but then as you look at the pattern, they're mixing the yarns in sort of various combinations up through the sweater, which I wasn't massively a fan of. So I've decided to make kind of a graduation through my colours. So I've just started to shape for the armholes. So I've worked the yarns held double all the way through. So I've done obviously a section of the charcoal doubled. This is the charcoal and the brown grey, and now I'm moving into the this was the brown grey and the orange, and now I'm moving into the orange section. I am also going to, once I've done the orange, move through to yellow, and then my final colour will be blue. So that's kind of my colour graduation. I've gone backwards and forwards loads of times on this 5th colour. I had picked out a green. Actually, I picked out the avocado from the felted tweed, because although the felted tweed is slightly thicker, it's on the finer side of DK, and I thought I could probably work that into this sweater. But I decided it didn't quite work. I've got a few other colours of Valley Tweed in the shop, and I had loads of input. I almost went for a red. All of the colours look nice together. I couldn't decide, but I finally settled on the blue, I think. So that's kind of how my sweater will look colour-wise. Hopefully that will work out okay. Keep your fingers crossed for me. So that is everything for the knitting, crochet, spinning and weaving. I do have a small dyeing section to show you. So there were 7 of us who went away for the weekend, including the amazingly talented Jenny of Owl About Yarn, who I mentioned earlier as the dyer behind that gorgeous purple skein in my Radiate sweater. And she so very generously let us have a play in the dye pots over the weekend. She brought her dyeing equipment and we all got to dye a skein or 2. Some of the other ladies dyed sweater quantities for themselves. I just dyed 1 skein for me, and I also came away with some mini skeins dyed in the various colours that the other ladies chose. So this is a really nice little souvenir of the weekend away. So unsurprisingly, I dyed obnoxious orange, which I absolutely love. We didn't do any dye mixing or anything fancy. We literally just put some of the dye powder in the pot and dip my skein in. We were trying for like a dip dye effect. So basically I stood over the dye pot and sort of held one end of the skein in and was kind of like lowering it gradually into the dye pot, and the idea is you get one sort of more saturated part of the skein than the other. It kind of, on the camera you can kind of see a little bit of a difference. I think you can definitely see there's a more sort of intense orange, but in person it didn't really work. But the dye actually took ages to exhaust in the pot, so it's definitely a semi-solid, more than you know, a sort of graduated skein, but I am more than happy with that. I have no idea what I'm going to do with this yet. It will probably go into a shawl or a cowl or something, but I shall try and come up with something for that fairly soon. So yes, that was my colour. I also have a mini skein of that. These are two different bases, and my colours aren't too dissimilar, but some of the other ladies who dyed on this is a high twist BFL, and this I think Jenny said was Peruvian Highland wool. So some of the ladies, the colours were quite different on the different bases, which was fun to see. But I have 4 mini skeins here. So I have this lovely brown, which was dyed by Jeanette, and her colour was quite different, I think, on the high twist BFL, and she's going to make a sweater out of hers. This lovely grey, really subtle tonal grey, I really like this one. Well, I love them all, to be honest. Was dyed by Charlie, and then I think Jenny or Catherine might have done this one. I am missing a blue skein, so Catherine dyed some blue, and for some reason I haven't ended up with one of those. And this gorgeousness was dyed by Ruth. So she did a yellow base and then speckled orange and brown over the top, and is going to make a sweater from hers as well. So Jeanette, I think everyone else apart from me dyed a sweater quantity. So yeah, I have these gorgeous minis, which actually look really lovely together, I think. And oops, obviously my orange one too, and then my obnoxious orange, love it. As a souvenir. So thank you so much, Jenny, for your time and your patience, and yeah, your talent and your knowledge that you so freely shared with us over the weekend. It really added to the joy of the weekend, so thank you. My weekend was brilliant. As well as dyeing and spinning, we obviously did our knitting, and we got to crank some sock tubes on a vintage sock machine that Charlie bought with her, and I'll chat about those next week, just because of time, really. See those as a whip next week. The lovely Jeanette gave us all a goodie bag, so I just wanted to show you the gorgeous new project bags that I have, which was part of that goodie bag. And Jeanette also so wonderfully dyed us all a skein of yarn, and this is the one that she dyed for me. She dyed us all yarns in our favourite colours, and I got this gorgeous orange. So you can see it's gorgeously tonal, so I am contemplating a project for that at the moment. I think I've decided, but I'm not sure. I've got loads of things that I want to cast on. It's ridiculous. So that's everything for the making and the new things that have come my way this week. A couple of things left to chat about. The Ravelry group. We still have our 12 cast-ons cal going on. So here for the 12 cast-ons of Christmas cal, back at the end of the last year, the beginning of this year. We're carrying through the cal for the whole year, so any projects that you cast on as part of the 12 cast-ons of Christmas, if you work on them and finish them in 2020, then there's a finished objects thread over in the Ravelry group. You can add your projects to that. The chatter thread for that is still open also. I'm hoping to get a new cal up and running. I've been saying it for weeks, but I'm going to start it next week, hold me to it. And then the final thing that I just wanted to chat about before I disappear. Last episode I raised the idea of a Yarn and Yarns community window display. So one of my lovely friends, Lisa, hi Lisa if you're watching, suggested that maybe the Yarn and Yarns online community would like to contribute to a window display. I raised the idea in the last video and loads of people said they would be interested in getting involved. So thank you so much. You guys are all amazing, because I know that will involve an investment of your time to make something, and also a little bit of money to get things posted to me. So if you are able to join in and want to participate in that window display, I would be so thankful. So basically I am asking for any knitted crocheted objects, and I want mini things. So I should have bought some things to show, shouldn't I? So like a mini sweater. This is a mini cardigan that I was given when I was in New Zealand. A mini sock, a mini hat, like literally anything mini. My thoughts are to maybe have some sort of washing line type display for any garments. And then, as you know, because I like to hang things from the window, that would sort of like cover the hanging element. But then if anyone who is either a knitter or a crocheter wants to make any little amigurumis or things like that, we could have like a little display under the washing line, so I could create almost like a little garden, is my feeling. So sort of a little patch of green grass. I've got some artificial grass that I could put in the window with anything that people might decide to make creature wise, or flowers, you know, anything like that to decorate the sort of base of the window, and then have my sort of washing line effect to hang any mini garments that people want to make. There's tons of free patterns on Ravelry. You may already have your own. But if you would like to participate, there's no kind of restrictions on what you send, other than please keep it something small, so that I can fit as many things in there. I would also dearly love, if you are able to, along with the mini something you send, maybe a postcard with a picture of your area, or you know, you get those postcards with sort of collages of pictures of your area, whether that be your town or your county or your state, so that I can create a little display board showing where in the world all of the items have come from. Those postcards will be on display in the window. If you'd like to write a little message on the back, brilliant, but I would encourage you maybe not to put your name and address on there, because it would just mean it's easier for me not to have to cover up those details if I'm putting them in the window as part of the display. So any and all are welcome to join in if you have the time, the inclination. I will put the address of the shop below this video, but if you Google Yarn and Yarns at any point, Yarn and Yarns Penarth, you'll find the shop address anyway. Where are we? We're in February, so if I say mid-April, so 2 months, yeah, mid-April for the deadline for that, so I can change the window at the end of April. What do you think? Yeah, doable. A mini something probably takes an evening to work up, and then plenty of time to get it in the post to me. So yes, I'd love if you're able to display a little something from you. As I say, pattern and yarn, your choice. Entirely. I will be grateful for anything that you want to send. Almost anything. You know who I'm looking at. You know who you are. So yeah, I think that's it. We've come to the end, finally, thankfully. This week has been another difficult week for some of us in the online knitting community. I'm not going to dignify the whole issue by going through it, but I just want to say, for anyone who has been hurt or involved in those online discussions, I'm so sorry, and if you need love and hugs, I'm sending them your way. Until we get to see each other again, I hope that you get to do some of the things that you enjoy. Until next time, great big woolly hugs to you all. Bye for now.
What's his paw doing? Do you want to high five me? High five. You're a silly cat. Cats don't like having their tummy tickled.